Hello, everyone, and welcome to SHR, Scepter Hospitality Resources webinar, The Art of Selling to Three Generations, Marketing to Millennials, Engaging GenXers, and Breaking Through to Boomers. This is JC Manis. I am the head of marketing here at SHR, and I'll be your host today. SHR, for those of you who might not be familiar with us, is the developer of the reservation system and booking engine Windsurfer. We are here to keep hotels competitive, serving thousands of properties around the globe, and we are now in Barcelona, having recently opened up that office. But enough about us, let's meet today's guests. First up, let me introduce you to Catlin Origitano. Probably butchered that, Catlin, but I'll let you
that was impressive. Amazing job.
All right, feeling good. Catlin is the Senior Content Marketing Manager at Sojourn, with nearly a decade of social media and content marketing experience. Catlin helps hoteliers and travel marketers improve their marketing efforts worldwide. Hello, Catlin. How are you? I'm
great. Thank you so much for having me.
You bet. Next up, SHR's own VP of Product, Estella Hale. Estella has 4 children, 3 at home, and 1 here at the office. Called Windsurfer CRS.
Called Windsurfer CRS, that's true.
She possesses a rich hospitality background, including implementations and support for hotel management groups, managing client services departments, and holding special guest and internal services positions at major hotel chains. Welcome.
Thank you. Good morning.
All right. So let me encourage everyone at this time that as we go through the call, you can ask questions using the Q&A function, and we will address those towards the end. So you'll want to take full advantage of that. So let's get started with that.
Yeah, so I just wanted to introduce Sojourn if people aren't familiar with us. So we are travel's direct demand engine. So we work with thousands of independent hotels across the world to help drive direct bookings through display and SEM. We do it in a unique pay per performance model so that our clients and customers only pay after a direct booking we drove ends in a stay. So we specialize in path to purchase data, so we're able to see travelers as they're have high intent for travel and target them with ads.
Hey, Catlin, I've noticed that marketers hire you, but hotels hire you as well, right?
Yeah.
So either way.
Yes,
okay.
Absolutely.
Just want to clear that up.
Yeah, no, I recently was invited, for instance, to Fairmont did a Digi Day where they brought in all of the Fairmont revenue and marketing people for all of California into the Fairmont in San Francisco where I'm headquartered. And we had like a day of learning. And so I was invited to just talk about, what is programmatic? What are the different types of advertising out there? How should you think about content marketing? So I am very fortunate to get to work very closely with hotels and travel marketers and all sorts of different verticals.
Okay, very good.
Yeah.
Okay, and I explained a little bit about SHR, and we're going to ease into this webinar. Let's do a polling question as we talk about the changing landscape. So our audience, if you would not mind, which generation do you struggle the most to attract? Millennials, GenXers, baby boomers, and not sure. I'm not sure if I'm a millennial or a Gen Xer.
We'll help you figure that out.
After the presentation, you will.
There's a test. There's a test with my phone, probably.
Any guesses as to what the distribution is going to be like on this one?
I don't know. I would imagine millennials are probably the toughest. We've been marketing to boomers for years, right?
All right. Okay.
Results.
Sharing results.
Sharing results. And millennials have it. Millennials always have it.
What's surprising too, though, is the not sure is actually the next highest one. So even identifying, right, knowing what market is the one you need to focus in on, I think we can shed some light there as well.
Yeah, so the good news, that's why we're here.
Yeah.
So with that, with easing into this thing, we just want to talk about the fully engaged guest, and studies are showing us that fully engaged guests simply just spend more money. The challenge is getting them fully engaged. Here's our agenda. We're going to talk about who these generations are, why are they important, how do you reach them, and give you some key takeaways at the end. With that, Catlin, let's start off.
Yeah.
My original question, who is a millennial?
Who is the millennial? Great question. We'll figure out if you are a millennial right here and right now. So when you think of who is a millennial, maybe a lot of like stereotypes come to mind about, you want to answer it in that way, but there is a sort of at least age demographic that we think about when we think of the traditional millennial, and it's flexible, right? It's not necessarily if you were born in this year, if you fall into this category, but roughly the millennials are the group born between the early 1980s and the late 1990s. And I think what we saw with the poll is they are a typically prized market these days. And one of the reasons for that is because they are sort of maturing into their spending power, right? As I, full disclosure, am a millennial, and as I progress in my career, right, and as we look to have families or buy houses, we have more disposable income, and we are also, there's a lot of us, right? It's going to be one of the largest ever consumer generations. And so the spending power for the millennial is massive at about $200 billion annually.
Very good. I'm not a millennial.
No? Okay.
Estella, why are millennials important to hoteliers?
Well, as we heard a moment ago, they're maturing in their spending, but also think about the time span, the time span that you have as a hotelier to nurture that spending and to nurture that customer and that guest, and the time that they will be traveling as they're maturing. So again, the figures show as they're most likely to travel abroad more than any generation. Also, very interestingly, over half of them prefer full-service hotels, and only 11% prefer type of service that is not necessarily hotel, but more of a Airbnb type. And we also see that they tend to be reward-oriented, but with loyalty programs, not necessarily brand loyal. So really, all demographics are more connected. They're all digitally savvy and they're all demanding. But as we're all aware, this particular generation of travelers lives pretty much every aspect of their life within technology. And that includes travel, research, and booking.
Very good. So, Kat,
Yeah.
what do you do about reaching them?
Yeah, I mean, I think Estella really hit the nail on the head there, that millennials have grown up with digital, with social media. Now, they're not digital natives, right? A digital native is someone who grew up entirely on a smartphone or a computer. That's going to be the generation that is around now, right? Like my nephew is growing up with a cell phone and a tablet in his hand. But I'm going to speak for a moment as a millennial, but I mean, I remember getting the internet. I remember getting social media networks like, first it was Friendster, and then it was MySpace and Facebook for a while. You could only get if you had an EDU address, only college kids could get it. So we definitely, I think the millennials helped pioneer a lot of the social media, but I do think, and I think Estelle, you kind of pointed out to this, one thing we'll see as we move through generations, the millennials are the only ones on social media. So even though perhaps they brought it to life, I think that we'll see that the other generations are really helping the social media and digital landscape sort of explode with possibilities. But because millennials have been on digital and on social media for most of their lives, for much of their adult lives, that's for sure, they do have very particular challenges to reaching and engaging with them. So they are likely to forgo the help of traditional travel agents. And instead, it's really all about that online experience for their flights and accommodations. So just some things to sort of help put this into context. So we know that 85% of millennials checked multiple sites before they complete their booking. And I think this really plays into maybe a stereotype about millennials, the fear of missing out, or what's called the FOMO, right? That you just want to make sure that the hotel you have is it the best price? Is it the best location? And so you just keep searching and searching until you make sure that you, maybe all of your anxieties about missing out on the best and whatever the best looks like for you are assuaged. Did you have something to say, Estella? Did I cut you off?
No, you're good.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, you're good. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so, and then I think the other thing, and this one is particularly interesting for me and some of the research we have on the Sojourn side. So we see here that 46% of millennials book travel through a smartphone or tablet. That is a crazy amount, right? That's nearly half. And why I think that's really interesting, to give a bit of context. So last year, well, actually technically this year still, we released a hotel report with Google where we looked at, the two of us looked at the searching and booking habits of everyone across generations. But what we looked at, for instance, was mobile. And we looked at mobile searching versus mobile booking in a variety of different ways. But one of the ways we looked at it was across days of week. And so we see that, for instance, across a full 7-day week, on the weekends, mobile searches go up. And that makes sense as people leave their desktops and start traveling or run errands. They bring their smartphones, but they're also bringing their travel searches with them. And overall, in general, more mobile searching is just growing. There's more and more people doing it. But on the flip side, when you look at mobile bookings are not there in the same numbers. There is a similar surge on the weekends, but there is not, compared to searches, there's a huge drop off. And I think this is something that a lot of people are seeing in the industry, and it may be leading people to think, I'm not sure, like maybe I don't need to, my mobile booking experience isn't the thing I need to focus on, or smartphones are only going to be the device for search or something like that. But when you pair that with this idea that 46% of millennials book travel through a smartphone or tablet, that is that's nearly half. And that certainly begins, I hope it starts people thinking about, as millennials, as we said, mature into their spending power, and think about the generations coming after them who, like I said, are growing up with mobile phones in their hand. The mobile booking, it seems like, is coming. And I think that this could be a place where, for instance, millennials maybe are leading the charge for better or for worse as far as the mobile booking. And then again, right, 74% search for travel-related info on their mobile phone. So the reaching them on their mobile and reaching them digitally is hugely important for hoteliers.
And that's good to know, because we've seen large percentages of offline booking.
Yes.
Even back in 2016, some of the research we've seen. But you can't, there's a lot of hype around this, but you can't ignore it. I mean, it is coming, right?
Oh, absolutely. And I think like Caitlin mentioned, sometimes if you look at your distribution stats, look at your distribution, your stats for reservation distribution, and maybe you don't see mobile as strong, but if you look at the first and the third figure, that is so important. 85% are checking multiple sites, and 74% are checking on their mobile device. So if 85% are checking on multiple sites, that means they're also looking on your website. And 74% of that time, they're looking at their mobile device. Mm-hmm. So let's go to the next slide, because that ties into our audience for this conversion. So we know a huge percentage is looking at multiple sites. So they're not just looking at yourbrand.com, they're looking at multiple sites. We know that even though at the time of booking, more than half is converting in another device, 74% of them are looking at a mobile device. So takeaways such as serving ads cross-device as travelers hit the road and you're still engaging with them, whether they're researching, as Caitlin said, during the week or in the weekend, whether they're researching on your parking lot before they walk in. Make sure your content looks good on all devices, especially smartphones. Be there for them. Get them to convert in that moment with persuasive messaging. So combine this with items that you know when you forecast, you know your length of stay, your lead time, and your distribution channels. So what is the type of messaging that you use to convert or to engage with them as they're doing the research and as they're doing their booking? Another point is to use instant gratification techniques directly once they're in your booking engine. So we know user-generated content is huge. As Catlin just mentioned a moment ago, the fear of missing out is also important. So I know I'm getting a good deal. I did a good deal of research. I looked at all of these places. So how do you show that instant gratification when they go to your site? Doing something like strike-through pricing, doing something like showing a parity, allowing them to book directly. These are some things in which you encourage that gratification after their search so they convert with you. And then, of course, they interact heavily with apps. So aside from guest stays and guest bookings, as they're interacting with their applications, that is what they're used to. So, you know, take a look at what your experience looked like and see if there's anything that you can capture with those great apps and the look and feel and what you can bring into the experience when they're interacting with your brand and with your booking engine.
So, booking engine, a subject near and dear to our heart. I'd like to ask our audience a question at this time on the booking engine. You will see it momentarily. Audience, how satisfied are you with your booking engine's capabilities and features? Mobile appearance, review display, add-ons, upgrading, room customization. Very satisfied, somewhat dissatisfied, or very dissatisfied? Let us know. Guesses?
I think I'm guessing an even distribution with these.
What are you seeing, Estella, when you're talking to hotels? All over the place?
It is, yes, it is. And it also depends on the hotel profile and how much attention they're paying to their demographics. So it is mixed.
Results. The results are in. Somewhat satisfied takes the cake, followed up by somewhat dissatisfied. So we're kind of in the middle. Okay, good to know. All right, Catlin.
Yes.
This is my generation.
Yeah.
GenX.
The GenXer. Yes. Let's talk about the GenXers. So they are generally born between 1965 and 1981. I have a soft spot for GenXers because they are, some could say, stuck in the middle of two very large and very loud different, I think they're loud, different types of generations. So the GenXers sometimes referred to as the silent generation, but they are still a force to be reckoned with at roughly 66 million people in the US. And I think what's particularly interesting about the GenXer is they have actually a ton of spending power. Because these are people who are a little bit more mature in their career, who probably are homeowners, who have like families, they're established, they actually have a huge amount of spending power, but they sometimes are ignored for, let's say, a millennial or a baby boomer, you know, where that, as we said, like that's where a lot of people, the conversations are about how to capture those two groups. But the Gen Xers have roughly 29% of the estimated net worth dollars and 31% of total income dollars in the US.
So I am a middle child.
Yep, there you go.
But I don't feel the strength of buying power. I gotta look into that. I think I'm lacking with my fellow Gen Xers. So, Estella, what do you think? What's important to hoteliers?
Well, again, you know, as we were mentioning earlier, they spend most dollars each day while traveling. This also is influenced by families. You know, this is family travel. This is something that their priority somewhat shifts. They also have both family travel and corporate travel. So they're quite there's quite a bit of a mix there, but they are heavy researchers. They're going to visit the source of the brand site more often, especially when it is more than one person traveling and the research doesn't stop at the OTA site. So this gives hotels more opportunity to impress them directly. So remember, keep your social media profiles updated, keep them active. This with the GenXers, you truly are communicating to multiple generations. You're communicating sometimes to the entire family travel. And as they're planning, for example, a vacation or a trip, there's more than one person looking at the profile and the different aspects of travel.
You know what's interesting about that is car companies notice as well, and they appeal to the children.
Yes.
And there's been research that shows that children actually make some of the car buying decisions for parents.
And teenagers too. You know, some of those Gen Xers have teenagers and they travel as a family, and the voice of both partners is important. So again, just look at your guest comments, keep communication channels open, because Gen Xers are heavy researchers, they have good spending power, and their hotel stay is a top priority. So of course they pay attention to air itineraries, etc., but their hotel stay is a top priority. So it's great to pay attention to your content and your users generated content.
Yeah, I've moved beyond concrete walls. I want carpet in my room, et cetera, et cetera. So, Catlin, reaching them. How do we reach them?
Yeah, good question. So again, as you said, the sort of middle child in between these two generations is truly where the Gen Xers sort of live and breathe. They're a hybrid between millennials and baby boomers, right? As I mentioned, it might have been millennials who started, Facebook, but it's going to be the Gen Xers and the baby boomers who have made it into a billion-dollar business because they're on it, they're using it, they are on smartphones, right? They are fast adapters of all of these different types of technologies. If they weren't, the millennials don't have the spending power to make all of these things as valuable as they are. It's really going to be some of these, the generations before them that are. But again, just because they're on, there's fast adapters of social media and smartphones, doesn't mean that that's the only place you can reach them, right? We see more and more that they do prefer to book on desktop. We talked about how the millennials are, nearly half of them are booking on mobile, but we don't see that in the same way with Gen Xers. They'll use a smartphone for the researching part of it, but then they use the desktop to book. And one of their major concerns is getting the best deal. And this could be, right, going back to what Estella said about being the family decision makers, right? When you're trying to figure out how to get a family of 5, let's say, on vacation, you need to think about the best deal to make sure that you are getting something that will be fun for the kids and hopefully fun for you, and also not break the bank. So you have a lot more sort of decision making that you need to do. And so with that, all that decision making comes reviews. So we see 85% of Gen Xers read reviews of places they want to visit before making a decision. And 71% of Gen Xers research via OTAs, relying heavily on travel review sites when planning a trip. Though that doesn't mean that they won't book direct, they just want that third-party validation. And I think this might be a place where we see a little bit of both similarity and dissimilarity, let's say, between the millennials and the Gen Xers. It seems like both generations are really interested in that third-party validation and having someone else, user-generated content, let's say, validate like this, the place really is nice, the bathrooms really are clean or something like that. Whereas millennials seem to go to Facebook or other social media channels and rely on the insights of their friends and family, their close circles, right? You've seen that, like, recommend me a place here. And that seems to be really popular. Here we're seeing more, well, there's still that desire for that third-party validation, but it's not necessarily in those smaller circles of it. What do my friends and family think? It's what do other people, from all walks of life think. You want the third-party validation. It's okay if it's anonymous or from these different reviews, these aggregated review sites. So it's something to maybe think about too, is how your third-party or your user-generated content, how you're using that to sort of talk to this generation because they are really interested in it. But I also think I just want to sort of add, and I think Estella, you've inspired me here, to your point that even though the Gen X's are perhaps in between these millennials and baby boomers, that actually is, I think, the most exciting part, because they could be booking for family, they could be booking for, a fun weekend just away, they could be booking for business. They have even though you might not feel like it, but statistically, like the larger income and the more sort of like stabilized ability to go travel, and they have so many different types of travel that they can take. So they become both, I think, maybe really prized, but also really tricky to reach, because what kind of travel are they looking for? And so knowing that they're a Gen Xer is certainly helpful, but then you'll also need to know or think about, is it a family Gen Xer? Is it a business Gen Xer? That they can actually sort of like morph and become all of these different audiences. And so you have to think through the different types of ways that you could reach them depending on their trip motivation or something like that.
Very good. Estella, talk to us about the takeaways here.
Well, as Catlin mentions, this is a little bit trickier because it is in between, but at the same time, it is someone that has also grown along with the technology, that from a hotelier perspective, we've grown as well. We've grown into the online booking. We've grown into intermediaries and meta search sites, etc. So this is also a generation that I think it's understood, yet we have just a handful of takeaways that we can action on, that we want to give today. So the first one is just nurture them for the long haul, what we call education over inspiration. Again, because it's such a broad spectrum of travel that a Gen Xer can cover, make sure that you are conveying the best value of your property. There are so many things that can be published as far as content about your property, but knowing your audience, knowing what makes it more attractive, give them that information, give them that content to consume, so that they feel that personalized attention as what they are getting when they visit you. Then reassure GenXers that you're the best choice for overall value. Of course, with a strong revenue management strategy, with making sure that you have a great value and a great offer for the market, within your comp set and what sets you apart. And then craft that messaging via yourbrand.com booking engine that caters to them, with images of the total experience. So again, from information to content to photos, etc., researching, have them be a lot of the content, that's where they're going to end.
Are they doing a good job on here, and you want the total experience? I mean, I do that myself, like what's nearby. Is it, are hoteliers doing a little better job of, they probably got nice photos of the rooms, great, but tell me what's around the corner, that kind of thing?
I think they are, and again, usually it is whatever is the value that hotel brings. It could be that there is day tripping ideas in that destination or near that property. It could be that it is more the location. It could be that it is more the price. It could be that you did a recent renovation and you want to bring those pictures or those images. It could be that you just redid the pool with a splash pad, and that is going to attract families. So really, what is the value offering for that generation? And is your content around that, and placing it into that is the value of my property and reflecting it, so they really see what they will get in that experience.
Yeah, the U.S. Grant in San Diego's got a sommelier that is he's famous in that area. He's very popular, and they do a pretty good job of making sure he's out there. And so that, yeah, it's interesting. Okay, now, Catlin, let's talk about boomers.
The beloved baby boomers. So yeah, the baby boomers are roughly 75 million. So this is why they're, one of the reasons why they're a very prized market is because there's a lot of them. And they are generally between the ages of 52 and 70, born between 1946 and 64. And I think this is, again, one of the other reasons the baby boomers are so prized is that they control about 70% of all disposable income in the US, which is just a massive amount of both spending power and then also size for a generation.
Cool. Estella, why is that important to hoteliers?
Because of their travel, their ability and their willingness to travel. They're going to take at least one leisure trip per year, but on average, they take 5 trips per year. Also, they tend to be more loyal to the brand or the locale. However, again, remember, though these are 3 generations that can seem unlike each other, looking into the similarities and their differences are key to that increased conversion and reaching them. So they do tend to be more loyal to the brand. They do tend to be more loyal to the locale. They want to go and repeat that wonderful experience that they've had before, but they also have technology at their disposal. And they also do have the ability to compare and reviews, etc. So, you know, both mastering the similarities and the differences are important, but catering to those that know the experience and can repeat that experience, catering to them and creating that loyalty is important for hoteliers.
So Catlin, talk to us about reaching the boomer.
Yeah, absolutely. I think this is something that, you know, both Estelle and I have been saying this whole time, right? But that there is actually a lot of similarity in how you might reach all of these different generations. And so I think it's important to focus both that there and then also on the differences. And like I said, right, like I've got a Facebook, my mom has a Facebook, we talk all this, you know, she's got a smartphone. This idea that, you know, the baby boomers aren't tech savvy is just completely, it's a myth. If anyone thinks that's the case, it's the myth. It's a myth because again, Facebook and all these different platforms wouldn't be as valuable if the baby boomers weren't on them and weren't active users. So we do know that the boomers are tech savvy, right? We see them ranking researching and shopping as their 3rd and 4th most important online activities. So they do like to search and research online. But as Estella pointed out, they are more brand loyal, let's say, than some of the other generations. And they are, I mean, who isn't? What generation isn't concerned with a good deal? I think what one place where the generational difference might be is what we consider to be good or a good deal, where that sort of shakes out. But we know that nearly 7 out of 10 boomers say that they think the word economical is what describes their experience with a loyalty program. So they are concerned with having that good deal with that brand. And that's why they'll come back to a brand if they feel like they've gotten a good package that sort of meets the needs of like a good experience matched with a good price point. And I think this is sort of what we've mentioned a little bit with the millennials, that even though the boomers rank, they're on their smartphones and they're on their desktops searching, they are the least likely of all of our generations to make a mobile booking. In fact, right, this is really where some of the offline resources come into play. We see that 1 in 5 boomers still use offline channels to make room reservations. So reaching them when they're doing their searching and when they're doing their planning can still be done and should still be done, right? On your website, they're still going to go there, on mobile phones, on Facebook, they're still going to be there. But they are going to need that or rely on that offline, that making that phone call to your hotel to really seal the deal. So you could reach them in the same way as you do all the other generations, but it might not be enough to get the boomers in the door.
Very good. Key takeaways, Estella.
Well, we know they use multiple screens. So we know they will have a smartphone, even if they do not end up booking there, they're going to use multiple screens. So looking at your ads being cross devices or something that they can look in one device and then go to a different one and find the same thing easily is important. Also, generating guest-specific rates for loyalty programs. Again, this is a guest that wants to be loyal. So if you have the ability to reward someone that has stayed with you, that is most likely to want to repeat a great experience that he had with you, go ahead and generate that guest-specific rate for them. The third one, I was very impressed with the previous slide where it said that shopping is their third and fourth most important activity online. That's incredible, but yet not when it comes to hotels and not when it comes to that online booking. So they tend to shop for everything online, but not to that degree for their hotel. So looking at something like using a shopping cart metaphor for your booking engine could entice them because they are used to doing that activity so well on a retail perspective. And then, of course, do not underestimate or forget the importance of solid call centers and front desk help. And even going beyond that and saying, can I tie these? Can I entice them on a mobile device, but then give them the ability to, from that offer, from that page, from that whatever it is that they found attractive, give them a way to simply do one click. They are in a device that will allow them to call me anyway. So allow them from there connect to that channel that they feel comfortable with, such as call center or front desk.
Very good. That was a lot of info. Let's get to some questions. We have a few already in. Feel free to hit us up on the Q&A function there on your screen. Since we've got these fine experts here. Catlin, I think this first question's for you. It references the 200 billion spend on with regards to the millennials.
Yes.
Like, is that travel spend or is that total spend?
No, that's total. Yeah, that's going to be total spend. I wish that they were spending that in travel. We'd all be having this webinar about how do we reach them. No, so that's going to be total spend. And as we said, right, like that's just where they are now, and as they mature, that's going to be set to grow. Yeah, and even get more larger. And again, because they are also, they're similar, they honestly are similar to the baby boomers in that they are such a large generation that is just gonna skyrocket, hopefully, as they mature in their careers.
Okay, and then kind of a follow on with
Sure.
the millennials is for either one of you, Estella or Kat, do they look for best deals and non-cancelable or they prefer flexible rates when booking and free to keep searching? Does that make sense?
It does. It is not necessarily a very defined line. They are quite flexible. So they might prefer a great deal that is non-cancelable because they have the flexibility of, you know, just making plans for the weekend on a whim, even if it's not cancelable. But at the same time, they do keep researching. So if they do find a similar or better deal that has a more flexible policy, they will go for that.
Yeah, I would absolutely agree with that. I mean, I think I would add two things. So one would be, you know, this might be the time where you would want to layer on like other types of data. So if you, I don't know that you could just say, you know, as a millennium, they always have a tendency for this because as Estelle just pointed out, it depends on like the trip motivation. Why are they going? When are they going? What's the purpose? And so if you understood maybe a little bit more about, you know, like if you're thinking about how you set up, you know, if you want to set something up as non-cancelable or flexible, think too about what type of trip someone would be planning. If a millennial is planning a weekend getaway, they might be more or less flexible, or they might, if it's a last minute. So I think too, that's where you would want to layer on like other types of either data or thoughts about the like context to help set and test and learn your way to figuring out which one of those work best for you and for that generation. And then the other thing that I would say is we've actually done quite a bit of research on our end about the traveler path to purchase, and we see when we analyze the ways in which travelers and in particular book their hotels, we see younger people doing a lot of, for instance, like they'll book their hotel and then they'll just continue to search afterwards. It doesn't necessarily mean, we actually see them in one of the ones that we didn't actually see them cancel their original, but they still just want to go out and check and see and make sure. So it's not always just because they're doing a lot of searches doesn't mean that they're likely to jump around or to cancel a lot. It just means that they sort of want to be reassured. And so it's something that even after you've gotten that booking, you could do a second touch to them and reach out and be like, hey, did you know we also have this really great amenity that comes with your booking? Again, to sort of reassure them and let them know and engage with them, right, to the opening point about how important an engaged guest is, that even after you get that booking, you can engage and reassure people that they have a really good deal, that the location is super great, so that you can sort of help with some of that anxiety.
I completely agree. Engagement is very important, and engagement does not end at the time of booking. You continue nurturing that engagement and that expectation, and then of course serve them once they reach your property.
And I'm surprised lately, again, I'm not a millennial, I'm a Gen Xer, and I'm surprised at when, especially the last time I went to Vegas, that the big hotel that I was at wasn't texting me while I was on this huge property with, 3 restaurants and spa. I mean, my wife was with me, I was working, but she was there. If they would have hit me up with a 20% off the spa, just, emailed it to the wife, she would have been happy. So there's all that opportunity there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Next question. Any examples of popular travel websites that use shopping cart metaphors? I don't know.
Well,
I mean, shopping cart is a concept that's been around for years. So, I mean, you have Amazon, you have most when you're buying products. I mean,
I'm thinking of it. I'm thinking of it more from a hotel perspective.
Mm-hmm.
Is your booking engine being a shopping cart metaphor?
Right.
So yes, I think here at SHR we believe in that, and in fact, that is why my 4th child, like you mentioned, Windsurfer and the booking engine is a shopping cart metaphor. Is where someone is able to create an itinerary and add and delete and put things in the cart and remove them from the cart and save that cart for later, etc. So no, it's the booking engine itself that can have that shopping cart metaphor.
Okay. Next question. Don't you feel that the baby boomers also have much more flexibility in their travel patterns since they don't have to worry about school holidays, etc.? Can also travel midweek for lower rates. Yeah, I think we touched on, Estella, you were touching on, well, the flexibility of the millennials, which I guess is pretty similar. Like I'm an empty nester, a recent empty nester, and Friday I get off at work. If I want to go somewhere, I can pretty easily. As can my father, because I haven't been at my house for years. Okay.
Yeah, I'd just like to add, I think that's actually a really great way to sort of, remember our first question we asked where you're like, I don't know who the person I'm struggling to target with the most, or I'm not sure who I could, maybe. But for instance, if you think, I actually think this is a really solid hypothesis that you could test out and see if that is applicable to your property. So think through like what we talked about, right? Like this is where I think you can get creative. So we talked about the ways that you understand, let's say, really brand loyal, and they all. And so if you can think through like week deal that you think would be particular generation, think through the type, speak to them or the types of, and see, are you able, low occupancy midweek, is this type of marketing that you could test out and see if you could fill rooms this way? And I will also add, right, again, like we've been we're working on this really cool path to purchase report, and we'd see this family travelers, and they're booking a week away at an amusement park in Florida, and the dad is like trying to book it, and then he waits too soon. He waits and he can't book it because the kids are now back in school. Like you can see it, like, oh, I think we should go. Oh no, I missed my window. The kids are back in school. So he starts looking again at Christmas because that's the only other time the kids are away from school. So you begin to see the way that people, again, depending on their trip motivation, also obviously their generation, you can begin to see and understand the ways people plan and book, and then you can think more creatively about your ads, your messaging, your packages, all the way down to, right, like the booking engine, the shopping cart, and all of this thing, that all of it, you can use some of this, like these data and these takeaways to rethink about the ways that you maybe approach some of these different areas of your marketing.
I completely agree. And even as you're looking at the different type of travel, you know, let's say GenXers, especially when they're doing any type of corporate travel, then there's going to be not a lot of flexibility there.
Yeah.
But, and then also when you extend it beyond just the stay, going back and looking at the boomers, now that they've reserved at your hotel and they reserve the stay and you have full service, like Jason was mentioning, engage with them because they probably will have flexibility once they reach you. So engage with them regarding additional services at your property.
Very good. So, part of what you guys were talking about ties into this next question, and Catlin, maybe you guys have done some research on this. I mean, by generation, have you looked at how far in advance people book?
Yeah, so here's what the answer that I'm giving you is probably not gonna be the answer that you want, because we don't know, right? Like, so the way in which we collect, or the way in which we see things, is when people do searches, and when people go and do searches, they don't put in their generations. What we do see though, for instance, and again, like this often, it truly is not necessarily a better, but a very helpful indicator of lead time, is going to be things like trip motivation, party size, time of year, budget, things like that. So what we find is that lead time really, really depends on, for instance, if you're booking a luxury hotel, you have on average a very different lead time, and you're also going to see a lot more searches that people do before they book than you will if you're a more economical hotel. So we did some of this. If you look at our hotel report, we have some of this insight. It also is going to depend on what device they're using, right? If they're using a mobile versus desktop, I mean, part of that is we don't see as many mobile bookings, but there's so many different components that go into lead time that it's not necessarily like an average generational thing. Because as we've been saying, right, like someone who books a business trip, regardless of what generation you're from, is going to have a very short lead time, as opposed to someone who's booking a family. Again, regardless of what generation you're from, your booking of your family is going to take so much longer. So there's no real, I don't know of any averages about generationals. It's much more the focus, and what we find is more like actionable, and is the stuff around lead time, trip motivation, and that type of real-time data when people are actually searching, and then sort of serving them ads then. I don't know, Estelle, if you have anything or any thoughts about that.
No, I agree. I think another thing to take into consideration as we're giving you all of this information, you know, for the audience to know, this is all information that you then take and wrap around your revenue and your distribution strategy. So you're going to have goals. You're going to have goals on your side because you know the average lead time for bookers at your property. And you're going to have goals to fill in whatever gap does not naturally come into your property, because maybe it caters more to the corporate traveler. Maybe it caters more to the vacation traveler. So a lot of this information that we're giving you in regards to maybe flexibility, loyalty, offers, etc., it's not necessarily for you to add to the distribution strategy, but to complement it and to take some of these things and to say, okay, knowing what I now know after attending this webinar, how can I affect the gap where the lead time is within 24 hours, where the gap is the lead time within 2 weeks, or what have you? Is it more that flexibility? Is it more that offer? Just like you attack anything else when you're looking at distribution and revenue management.
Very good. Next question. You mentioned that boomers like to online shop for everything but hotels and like to call. So should we push calling more on our sites to get more boomer bookings? Is that the way it works? I mean, it's just got to be readily there, right? Like the opportunity to call.
Yes, but then again, looking at the content, can they get enough content in the information that they're looking at your site, so they do need to call? So yes, you do want to make it where it's easy for them to call when they're ready to book, when they're ready to make a purchasing decision, but at the same time, you're always monitoring your talk time. So it really is a balance between having the right content on that research stage and having a way to be easily reachable when they're at that purchase stage. So do look at the different pages that you're presenting, identify at which point are they more on the purchasing stage than the researching stage, and then determine which of those would be great to have a direct contact number that can take them maybe to a particular offer that they've already looked, or to a return guest or return stay.
Okay. Okay, next question. Someone brings up, is this just the U.S. or worldwide? I think a lot of the metrics or the stats we're seeing are U.S.
Yeah.
What do you think, Catlin? Yeah, U.S.?
Yeah, I mean, it's going to depend. Yeah, it's the stats that we talked about here are US. I do think it would be interesting to blow it out globally, but we're going to find even more interesting challenges. You know, so I can speak to one, for instance. We just did this report, I think it was a Japan report with Google, and we looked at mobile usage in Asia, for instance. And mobile usage in Asia for searching and booking compared to the US is just so different. So they are searchers and bookers. Like, they have no problem converting and booking on their mobile phone across generations. And so they pose a very, if you went in and broke that down by generations, they pose a very different set of challenges for hoteliers than in the US, where, only 50% of millennials are even booking, and that's the largest generation. So there's definitely going to be differences along the lines of different regions and different cultures. Absolutely.
Okay. All right, next question. We're trying to turn more OTA-generated bookers into direct bookers and find that the call centers really help, but how can we get more millennials to book direct if they prefer to book everything on the web?
I mean, super easy. Obviously work with Sojourn and we'll help. But I do think that as a millennial, right, like I'm on my smartphone all the time. And I do think one of the challenges, and I think this is, I don't know, I feel like every conference I've been to in the travel industry in the last year or two, the talk about the mobile experience, right? I joke, I'm not sure I'm not the only one, right? It's been the year of mobile for like the last decade. But the problem is that while people are thinking about the mobile experience, it still is not great, right? If you try and go and book, like we were talking about, a hotel on a mobile phone, it's not as smooth a process as like ordering something from Amazon. On BART today, I took the train in and ordered dog food like in 30 seconds. Very easily, I can do it simply, but that experience is not there on the booking. So even though millennials maybe want to be more mobile bookers, they aren't. So what you can do, and what we've seen, I think is a really cool feature, I've used it, is when people have, on their mobile phone or on their mobile website, to Estella's point, all of the information and content that you need, but then they have a push to call button on their mobile site. So you can just like really quickly tap a button and get connected with somebody who can help answer your questions or just help you do the booking. Because at the end of the day, I think regardless of generations, but I think millennials would certainly fall into this. Like, you just want to do it and be done and move on quickly, easily. You don't want to, right? We hate, no one likes long load times. Everyone just wants to, right? That instant gratification. I booked my thing, I'm done. So a call to click button on your mobile is a great way to marry the two, right? To make sure that you are getting those millennials who are probably searching, but maybe having a hard time booking, and still getting that connection. I think that would be a great, and it's one I've seen that I think is really successful. I don't know, Estelle, if you have any thoughts on that.
I agree. Just really giving that ease of use, especially again when they're in that purchasing phase, from the ability to save their itinerary. If they were waiting at a doctor's office and they found a good offer, reviewed your hotel they like, the ability to save the itinerary and pick it up later, either with their spouse or just at a different device, the ability to connect from that mobile device to a call. And thinking through how to make these connections, because there's more coming, chat, there's voice activated searches, there's more coming right after this. So beginning to create that cross context, cross device ability for someone to find your content and to complete your booking, it's a great exercise to start doing now.
Okay, next question. Since Gen Xers and boomers like to research so much, should we put a review site or maybe testimonials on our website?
Yes.
Yes.
No.
Quick answer, yes.
I mean, yeah, absolutely. I think that across generations, but definitely the people who are very research heavy, getting that feedback from other people is very helpful. Having, we are in a wonderful age in which user-generated content is being produced faster than we can consume it. And so you probably very easily can go look at your Twitter and Facebook accounts or pull from any of the other review sites and feature prominently, the way that other people describe and talk about your accommodations, not only as a way to educate people when, they're going to have the same questions probably, but also as proof points for just how great everything is. And again, right, we see a similar need to search. I think it's across, all generations, but anything you can do to reduce that fear of missing out or that anxiety, I think is a real winner. And it's a great addition to your website.
Very good. We are at the top of the hour, and I want to thank our guests, Estella, especially you, for walking down the hall and joining us here in the conference room.
My pleasure.
But thank you too, Catlin. It was very informative.
Time flies when you're having fun. This is awesome, guys. Thank you.
Yes, lots of good information. I hope everyone found it valuable. We've got some emails up there. If any of our audience wants to reach out to Catlin or Estella, feel free to do so. And again, we thank you. We know your time is valuable. We're going to let you run. Until next time, we'll see you then. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Have a great afternoon.